My name is Nia, and before I tell you this story, I want you to know something about me. I notice everything. Always have. My grandmother back in Lagos used to say I came into this world with my eyes already open, already watching, already filing things away somewhere deep inside me. She said it like it was a warning. Maybe it was. I came to America at 19 with one suitcase, a nursing scholarship, and the kind of hope that only works when you don't fully understand what you're hoping for yet. I didn't plan for Atlanta to become home, but that's how the truest things happen. You don't plan them. They quietly become real while you're busy doing something else. By 34, I had built a life here, a small apartment, a job I loved at a children's hospital. Pediatric nursing, the hardest and most sacred work I have ever known. I had my auntie beaux in Houston, a few close friends, and a habit of making very good jollof rice on Sunday evenings while old Fela Kuti records played in the background. I was full. I want you to understand that. I was not a woman with a hole in her chest waiting for someone to fill it. I had a whole life. But there are people who don't fill holes. They just add something quiet, something you didn't know was missing because you didn't have a name for it yet. Cole was one of those people. I first saw him on a Saturday morning in March. I had just finished a long night shift and was doing my final rounds. The children's ward on Saturday mornings has its own particular feeling, softer, slower, the light coming in differently. Parents who slept in uncomfortable chairs all night are finally getting coffee. The kids are watching cartoons with the volume low. Then I passed room 7. There was a man sitting in one of those tiny plastic chairs, the ones meant for 5-year-olds that completely destroy an adult's knees. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that looked like it had been outside a lot, honest-looking. He was holding Charlotte's Web and reading out loud, doing all the voices. Wilbur the pig sounded like a nervous Southern preacher. Charlotte the spider sounded like a very tired schoolteacher. It was not a good performance, not even slightly. But the little girl in the bed, 6 years old, ivy in her arms, stuffed elephant under her chin, she was laughing, real laughing, the kind that comes from the belly. I stood in that doorway longer than I should have, long enough to be late signing out. I didn't speak to him. I just watched. But something in my chest said, pay attention to this one. He came back the next Saturday, and the one after that. I found out from the volunteer coordinator that his name was Cole, that he had signed up for the hospital reading program months before I ever noticed him. He drove across the city every single Saturday morning, brought his own books, never missed a week. I am going to be honest with you. I started finishing my rounds near that hallway on Saturday mornings. Not every time, just most times. A woman is allowed to notice a kind man reading to sick children in a tiny plastic chair. Our first real conversation happened on a Wednesday. I was in the break room fighting a coffee machine that had decided it was done working. I was pressing buttons, hitting the side of it, gently, then not so gently, and someone behind me said very seriously, "Have you tried apologizing to it?" I turned around. It was him. In a gray sweater, slightly embarrassed to be in the staff break room, explaining he had followed the smell of almost coffee down from the volunteer coordinator's office. We stood there for 20 minutes talking about The Velveteen Rabbit, the book he had brought that morning. He said it was the saddest children's book ever written, and most people didn't realize it because of the soft illustrations. I said I had cried reading it at 8 and again at 26. He looked at me like I had confirmed something he already believed. That was how it started. Not with fireworks, with a broken coffee machine and a sad rabbit. Over the following weeks, Saturdays changed for me. I looked forward to them in a way I couldn't explain. Nothing dramatic was happening. Talking to him just felt easy. And if you have ever met someone that talking to feels truly easy, you know how rare that is. He learned I was from Nigeria. Most people ask the same questions, the weather, whether I miss the food. But Cole looked at me one morning and asked what I missed most that I couldn't find here. Nobody had ever asked me that. I told him the truth. My grandmother's voice, the rain on a zinc roof, a sound that has no name in English but feels like the sky having a conversation with the earth, the smell of Lagos at night near the water. He listened to every word. Then he said quietly, "Carrying all of that in a different country must take a particular kind of strength." And he moved on, just like that, naturally. I drove home thinking about those words for a long time. That was the first time someone in this country saw me. Not my accent, not my skin, not my visa, just me. About 6 months in, we started texting. Book recommendations, funny things children said on my ward. He would reply with exactly the right number of words, never too many. Cole never used a word he didn't mean. That was one of the first things I understood about him. Then one Saturday, he showed up holding a small potted fern. He handed it to me without ceremony and said he had heard me tell a colleague that I killed every plant I bought, so he looked up plants that were nearly impossible to kill. He said the internet warned him that even a fern still required occasional water and some dignity. I laughed so hard that 2 nurses at the station looked over. I took the fern home, put it on my kitchen windowsill, named it. I am not going to tell you what I named it. Around that time, my Auntie Bose came to visit from Houston. She is the woman who raised me after my mother passed when I was 11. Small, round, with opinions she delivers calmly and absolutely, like she is reading you the weather. She met Cole for about 90 seconds in the hospital parking lot on a day he walked me to my car after lunch, which had started happening naturally, the way things do when you run out of reasons not to. On the drive to dinner, Auntie Bose said nothing for a full minute, then, "That man likes you." I said we were friends. She looked out the window at the city going by and said very quietly, "Mm-hmm." Just that, "Mm-hmm." But after she left, I started paying attention differently. The way he remembered things I said in passing. Weeks later, mid-conversation, he would reference something small I had mentioned once and already forgotten. He turned his whole body toward me when I was speaking, not just his face, his whole self. He never once picked up his phone when we were together. Small things, I know, but I am a woman who notices everything, and small things, when they add up, are never actually small. I was falling, I knew it, but I kept telling myself I was just standing still. I learned about Cole's past the way you learn most things about quiet people, not directly, but in pieces, slowly, the way a photograph develops in a darkroom. His father was a hard man from a small town in Tennessee, where men were expected to be useful and silent about anything that wasn't practical. Cole told me once, almost casually, that his father said to him at 16 that showing emotion was weakness. He said it the way you describe the layout of a house, just information, no drama. He had been engaged once. I learned that sideways from something he mentioned briefly. I didn't ask, he didn't offer. I left that door closed. But I began to see the shape of him more clearly. Cole showed up fully for other people's feelings. When I cried at a little girl's discharge party, she had been with us 4 months, and when she hugged me goodbye, I completely fell apart. Cole sat quietly beside me and handed me a napkin and said nothing, which was exactly right. But when I asked how he was feeling about something real, his father's health, the weight of those drives to Tennessee, he would smile, make a small joke, and the conversation would turn around a river around a rock. Present for everyone else, absent from himself. One evening at a small Ethiopian restaurant I loved, something came over me, a tired kind of bravery. I put down my fork and asked him directly, "Cole, are we friends?" He said yes. I asked, "Just friends?" A long pause. He smiled, warm but not quite reaching his eyes, and said, "You're the best thing in my Saturdays, Nia." I kept my face calm. I am a nurse. I am very good at that. I drove home crying the whole way, not because of what he said. What he said was beautiful in its own incomplete way. I cried because of what he didn't say, because he had taken the question I handed him and returned it wrapped in something that was almost an answer, but wasn't. Some people build walls so high they forget there's a door. You can stand outside knocking, but you cannot knock forever. Christmas Eve, 2 years in. I was at the grocery store doing what single people do on Christmas Eve, buying things I didn't need. I was in the spice aisle reading the back of a jar I had no intention of buying when I heard my name. Cole, holding a basket with bread and soup, looking equally caught out by being alone at a grocery store on Christmas Eve. We spent 2 hours walking those aisles together. We put ridiculous things in each other's baskets. A stock boy watched us with the expression of someone who had many questions. We laughed until we had to recover by the frozen foods section. It started raining when we reached the parking lot. He drove me home. We sat in his parked car outside my building. Rain on the windshield, an old slow song on the radio, the kind written for exactly the moment you're already in. Neither of us moved. Long enough that the windows fogged at the edges, long enough that the silence became something you could feel with your hands. He reached over and gently tucked a lock behind my ear. His hand stayed near my face, not touching, just near. I stopped breathing completely. Then his phone rang. His sister, Diane. He looked at the screen and answered immediately. His voice shifted back to regular life. He hung up, said goodnight, said happy holidays. I went inside, closed the door, sat on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and my grocery bag still in my arms. Almost is the cruelest word in the English language. I learned that on Christmas Eve in a parked car in the rain. January came, and Cole pulled back. Still warm, still kind, but a new distance sat behind his eyes. His father had moved to a nursing facility. Cole was driving to Tennessee nearly every other weekend, carrying guilt that wasn't his to carry, the way children of cold fathers often do, trying to earn at the end what should have been freely given at the beginning. I gave him space because I respected him, but giving him space meant I slowly disappeared from his line of sight without meaning to. I went on a date in February. A colleague had insisted for months, and I ran out of reasons to refuse. The man was genuinely kind. I came home after 2 hours, sat on my couch in the dark, and finally admitted it to myself, fully, without softening it. I loved Cole. So I did the only thing I could with something that large and unspoken. I wrote him a letter, 3 pages, longhand. The broken coffee machine, Christmas Eve, the fern, everything. I wrote that being known by him, even partially, even sideways, had changed something in me I didn't want changed back. Then I folded it, slid it inside my copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God, and put it on the shelf. I told myself I was protecting myself, but really I was afraid he would be kind about it, and kindness, when it isn't love, is the most painful thing there is. It was a Tuesday in February, night shift, long one. My phone lit up with a text from Diane. "Can you call me when you get a break?" I stepped into the hallway and called her. She answered on the second ring, and her voice sounded hollowed out. I had heard that sound before. Many times in my work. I knew what it meant before she said anything. Cole had been driving back from Tennessee early Monday morning. Fog, an intersection, a truck that ran the red light. I don't remember exactly what she said after that. I remember the sounds of the hospital around me continuing, the beeping, the soft overhead announcements, the world moving forward without permission from anyone. I walked into a supply closet at the end of the corridor and sat down on the floor. Shelves of gauze and saline bags and boxes of gloves all around me. I sat there for an hour. I couldn't cry yet. I just sat with my phone in my hand and the fluorescent light buzzing above me, thinking about all that careful preparation on those shelves for every kind of wound except the ones that come without warning. I always thought there would be more time. We all think that. We think time belongs to us. It never did. I drove to Tennessee for the funeral, 4 hours alone. I stood at the back of the church. In the official language of his life, I was a friend, which was true, which was also completely insufficient. After Diane found me in the parking lot, we sat in my car and she talked and I listened. She told me Cole had spoken about me almost from the beginning, not dramatically, the way you speak about something you believe in and keep returning to. She said he had called me once the most remarkable woman he had ever met. She told me she had been gently pushing him for 2 years to say something to me, and every time he said the same thing. What if I ruin it? She reached into her bag and handed me a small brown notebook, his journal. She said she found it in his apartment and thought I should have it. There were entries going back years, small observations, things he had read. My name appeared across different months, different seasons, always the same quiet wondering, the same thing he was sitting with and couldn't bring to the surface. The last entry was 3 weeks before he died. One sentence: I need to tell Nia. I have been a coward long enough. I closed the notebook. I looked out at the Tennessee hills he grew up watching. The sky was doing something complicated, not quite gray, not quite blue, the kind of sky that cannot make its mind. He was going to say it. He had finally decided to say it, and the world did not give him the Tuesday to do it. A year has passed. I still work at the hospital. I still coordinate the Saturday reading program, in his honor now. I do all the voices, badly. The children laugh anyway. That was always the whole point. The fern is still alive, bigger than before. I water it on Saturday mornings and sometimes I talk to it. I know how that sounds. I don't care. The letter is still inside the book on my shelf. I don't read it, but I know it's there. There is something important about keeping it, about not destroying the evidence of what you felt just because it went unanswered. It happened. It was real. It deserves to exist somewhere. If you are listening right now, and there is a name you think about before you fall asleep, a feeling you have been folding and refolding and tucking away because you are afraid of what happens if you say it out loud, I want to speak to you directly. Not from grief, not as a warning, just as a woman who knows. Say it. Not because time is short, though sometimes it is. Say it because you deserve to live honestly, because the person you love deserves to know they are loved by you, specifically, genuinely by you. Silence only feels like protection. It protects you from one uncomfortable moment. It does not protect you from anything that actually matters. Say it gently if you need to. Say it imperfectly. Say it in a letter, one you actually send this time. Every Saturday morning, I sit in a tiny plastic chair that ruins my knees. I open a book and I read to a child who needs to laugh. I do it badly and I do it anyway. And I carry Cole the way you carry anyone who truly changed you, not only in grief, but in every small continuing thing. In the fern on the windowsill, in the letter inside the book, in the way I now turn my whole body toward people when they speak, because he showed me what it looks like to be fully present for someone. That is where love goes when it has nowhere left to go. It doesn't disappear. It just becomes the way you live.